Hello all, welcome to part 2 of my modular plywood workshop cabinet build. I'm going to start by whipping through the making of the fairly simple drawers and, in keeping with the lean theme, using the drawer runners themselves as side panels to minimise dust getting into the drawers. I'll show you a neat way to make some mushroom drawer knobs using just one setup on the bandsaw, and to finish I'll throw in a little workshop tour since the new cabinet has allowed me to rejig, and this is likely to be the most clear the workshop will be before I start my next run of chairs in spring. So let's make some drawers then. 7 I'll be making in total for this cabinet, starting off with ripping a load of sides and backs from the same leftover panels from the deconstructed cabinet of old. Then cutting all the drawer bottoms. These all the same dimensions, but the drawer depths differ. 4 shallow ones, 2 deep, and 1 somewhere in between. You can see the sidewall sets stacked on the table saw there. Normally, cutting panels on the MFT bench here is my preferred method. I went through great pains to set it up with the rail and fence just so. However, on this occasion, I hit an issue with the bench dog's fence. I noticed my panel's width differed by 1 to 2 mil each end. Turns out the under rail support bit must have got knocked at some point, bending slightly towards the bench front. This meant its rear support dog, meant to keep it true, also wasn't set true, yet looked like it was doing its job as I cut. I know bench dogs actually machine this under rail support from the solid rail profile now, rather than it being an add-on like mine, which I'm sure helps, but I still think it being machined down to just 9mm by 20mm, it'd be a weak point, susceptible to bending given a knock. I'm going to be doing a fix here I'll show in a future video. Basically, I'll be laying the fence flat to give it more rigidity in the direction you want. Look out for that coming soon. The drawer bottoms not being perfectly square is not a huge issue for me for this build. I just make sure to orient all the narrower cut ends toward the rear of the drawer. But it does mean that now each drawer will have to be a bespoke set with its back trimmed specifically for its bottom. This is going to cost time and faff, but there we are. Thankfully, my new Hongdui fence I reviewed recently has a lovely micro adjust, making it easy to dial in the trim for a decent fit. Last part for the drawer sets is the drawer fronts. I was given this oak tabletop by a family member some years ago, really badly twisted and cupped, but always thought it'd work nicely for drawer fronts at some point. That point is now. There is just, and I mean by a hair, enough material in it to do 6 full drawer fronts. The remainder at the ends I've just trimmed there, I'll try and piece together to create the 7th. You can see just how cupped it is on the table saw. Still, I've slightly oversized them, so we'll get them flat and square edged with a bit of planer thicknessing. The drawer backs, sides and bottoms are just being glued and screwed together. I've marked out and drilled a side and back piece which will act as a template for all the other parts. This saves me marking out each one. Then it's just a matter of glues and screws. I've got a couple of plain stops on the bench to help me keep the front edge of the sides in line with the front edge of the bottom. With the backs, I get a screw in the bottom of it first, then use a square to sit it upright before screwing the side panel into it, and so on and so on. At least this way, I can know the sides and back are square to the bottom, even if I know the bottom narrows toward the back. I still think I'm going to need counselling to come to terms with that though. Moving on, the 7th drawer front, I'll just be gluing together the 2 ends of the tabletop, adding these offcuts to the side and one of the slim rips you see there to the top to give me correct dimensions for the drawer in the top box. So the drawer fronts being a nice bit of oak, I want a concealed fixing to the drawer box. For this I'll be using 5mm dominoes and using the 10-minute workshop jig. Meant for 18mm stock, I've attached with double-sided tape 2 3mm packers to give correct centre alignment on 12mm ply. On the drawer boxes I'm machining the tight domino slot. On the back of the drawer fronts I'll be machining the larger loose domino slot to give a little wiggle room. I had to dismantle the jig to do these, but the central slot in the jig has a handy crosshair to align to my pencil marks. And so it goes, 4 slots in each drawer box and front. I'm sure you all know how it goes with dominoes by now. Cut the slots, knock in the loose tenon, add a bit of glue, make the pieces together, then clamp up. When the glue's gone off, we have ourselves some basic but deceivingly posh fronted drawers. Little bit different for the drawer front I've made from the leftovers as the grain orientation goes the wrong way. To allow for that, it's getting a ply backer, just glued and screwed to the drawer box again. The oak drawer front itself, purely a facade on this one, can itself be glued and screwed to the ply backer. screwed from the inside of course. For the drawer runners, as I mentioned in part 1, the bottom runner is the side stretcher of the frame itself. The next ones up are all 20mm ply rips, as you see there. Acts as both the runner for the drawer above, but also as a top guide for the drawer below. The same effect that routing a housing in the drawer side would have. I simply position the runner, little drop of glue each end, above the current drawer, spaced with a 1mm packer, then screw down. Insert the next drawer and do the same, and so on. Once all in place, the runners give me decent enough cover to prevent too much dust getting in the drawers, if any. To that end, I glue and screw the same sort of 20mm rips to the back to seal it up too. To keep the drawers aligned to the runners like a train on its tracks, I cut these little ears on the bandsaw. Some, like this one, have a little rebate to make up for the bad panel cut I mentioned earlier. These I just screw in place at the back of the drawer, one each side, and they work like this. Despite my best efforts, between the dodgy panel cuts, the reuse of old twisted ply, and screws biting into the board edges where they like rather than exactly where you want, I've got a bit of neatening up to do with the oak fronts. The aim is to achieve nice even gaps between the fronts. Pencil mark here and there, then a few licks with the Stanley No. 4. This is the bit I enjoyed most about building this, any excuse to use my planes and chisels, and I'm like a pig in Sherwood Forest. The vertical line could do with an eaten up too, so mark the difference with a straight edge, then dial in and trim at the table saw. Happy, I can then go about matching the right side to the left. Might seem a bit too much fuss for a workshop cabinet for some, but I'll have to look at it every day. If it's too janky, it doesn't make me happy, especially on the hardwood details. Talking of details, let's do some drawer knobs. I have the bandsaw fence and stop block set to give me every cut I need without resetting here. First, I seat a piece of 18mm stock to the fence to give me my first score cut. Take care if you try this and are not too experienced on a bandsaw. If you don't keep it square as you turn, it will kick. I then remove the fence spacer, flip my oak dowel and cut away the waste. Then spin to clean. Next, flip the dowel back again, no spacer on the fence this time, to score cut for cutting off. And there's your basic mushroom drawer knob. I do this each end of the dowel, trim it off, then go back and do the next two at the bandsaw. But a little forethought, it's a great way to quickly churn out what can be time-consuming components without a lathe. Next, the knobs need to be centre marked, then pre-drilled. Again, because of the grain direction, pre-drilling is important. Being end grain in oak, I like to precondition the holes for a screw too. No danger of splitting when you fix to the drawer then. They then all get a light sand and edges eased over. Finally, last part to make is the top panels. I've already sized these and I'm plunge cutting here inside the board width to leave me 2 ears each side to interlock with the cabinet. These top panels fit into the modular design of the cabinet, so as here you can have them just slot into the top to give you a large flat surface. They are of course reversible. They're about 1mm shy of the actual cabinet dimensions to keep things easy to swap over. As well as that, you can remove a top panel, nest in the top box and seat the panel on top of that. The top box, like the panels, can go either side. This allows you to add or take away from the cabinet as needs dictate. I decided to give the frames a whitewash. 2 reasons really. My table saw shelf and drawer is oak on white, so now it's kind of a theme. Plus, not all of the ply rips are from the same original sheet, so colours vary a little. Whitewash hides that. I think it also highlights the skeletal nature of the main carrying frame, which I quite like. The oak fronts, meanwhile, are getting waxed. This is carnauba wax, kindly sent to me by Leo at Hand I Craft. If you've watched any of my other bench builds, you'll know I'm partial to a bit of wax on them. Wax is the least trouble to apply and, more's the point, reapply when you need to with minimal prep. Ideal for around the shop. This carnauba wax from Leo has a pleasant, delicate smell. It's a nice consistency from the pot, even in the cold as it is here. It also disperses about as well as you want from a wax, giving reasonable coverage. Seems to really nourish this oak. Great job with this, Leo. The knobs all get the same wax rub down and can now be fit. I've already laid out and drilled the holes in the drawer fronts. Screw partially through, knob seated in position and tightened down. And finally, it's done. Look at the little beauty there. While Saggy Pant Man puts on the finishing touches, I can explain something I didn't mention in part 1 that explains the cabinet's dimensions and why it has that funny little top box. Well, much like the unit this replaces, it'll be home to the miter saw and the new Shapak belt and bobbin sander I reviewed and fixed recently. This cabinet brings both their tables to my workbench height, but being modular, unlike the last cabinet, this new one needn't be considered committed to a miter saw or belt and bobbin sander. I'm certainly not committed to having the miter saw. It's a rough cut tool at best. That's all I use it for now. I use my over router to mill all my precision furniture miters these days. So if I change or get rid of the kit, the cabinet can change with it, and it looks pretty sweet too, I think. I've come to like having these benches and things that make me enjoy the space. It's also less embarrassing when a client pops their head in. A final bonus is that although the cabinet this replaced was also on wheels, this one being only 2/3 the length and weight means it can be much more easily manoeuvred around the workshop as needed. It'll work well for me, I think. There's really not much to show in terms of a workshop tour, but this is the view as you open the roller door. Even tidy it looks a mess, not helped by bags waiting for a recycle centre run on the right. Still, first thing that greets you is table saw and router table, along with a wall of formers and jigs for chairs. This little drill station is a recent addition. This seems a neat enough place for it, and like everything else in here, it's on casters so easily movable. Having decided to try my MFT bench against the wall for a while, I'm going to need to redo this clamp holder. My bench has a load of smaller clamps around the back that now need a more easily accessible home on the wall. Off to the right is said main MFT workbench, currently host to likely candidates to fill the new drawers and a bunch of leftover rips. The best thing about the new cabinet is it's meant I could finally bring over my mini solid wood workbench and vise to partner the MFT as it was originally meant to. This is going to make such a difference when I'm working. I'd love to get rid of that bloody tripod, but then that'd mean no more videos, so it'll stay, at least for a short while. The bandsaw, which was on the old cabinet, is back on its original legs, but I'll have that on its own roller soon enough. Well, I'd like to replace it, to be honest. Same goes for those wall cubbies too. Handy access, but ultimately dust buckets. Don't ever go behind that door. Nothing good can come of it. An IKEA Hillis galvanised shelf is home to some routers and accessories, a couple of other tools too. And between it and an extractor, my new cab with miter saw and belt sander. Above, a host of templates for chair components. Good old planer thicknesser there. Between it and the little drill station, the hardest working tool in the shop, no, not me, the Bosch vacuum, bless it. Oh, not forgetting the routing machine on the wall there above the thicknesser, how can I forget? So that's it. Not much in terms of space or kit compared to some, but I'm really proud of the work that leaves here, and that's all that matters really. So, what did you make of the cabinet build then? Has it given you any ideas? Even if what not to do? Is it what you thought it'd end up like if you saw part 1? Let me know or ask anything else down below. I hope you found it interesting if nothing else. Also, hit like if you did, sub if you aren't already. Thanks button is there if you want to show your appreciation in that way, and as ever, if you made it this far, thanks for watching.